Jimmy Fallon said a name and Sydney Sweeney's face froze. Her laugh stopped and the entire studio fell into that silence. The Tonight Show Studio 6A at Rockefeller Center. Another Thursday night, another packed audience. Sydney Sweeney was the guest. Young, beautiful, at the peak of her career. She'd walked onto the stage to massive applause, hugged Jimmy, settled into the guest chair with that confident energy that comes from being Hollywood's current darling. The interview was going perfectly. Jimmy was doing his thing. The genuine enthusiasm, the playful questions, the back and forth that made guests feel comfortable. Sydney was laughing, telling stories about her latest project, charming the audience exactly the way she'd done on dozens of talk shows before. Everything was exactly as it should be, safe, entertaining, the kind of late-night television that millions of Americans watched before bed. And then Jimmy glanced at his blue interview card and asked a question that changed everything. "So Sydney, I read that you dedicated your SAG award to someone special, a drama teacher from back in Spokane named Elena Costanos. Can you tell us about her?" The name hung in the air for exactly 2 seconds. Sydney's smile didn't fade gradually. It vanished like someone had flipped a switch. Her entire body went rigid in the guest chair. Her hands, which had been gesturing animatedly just moments before, gripped the armrest so tightly her knuckles went white. She stopped, opened her mouth to continue. Nothing came out. Jimmy's own smile faltered. He'd interviewed thousands of celebrities. He knew the difference between someone pausing for effect and someone genuinely unable to speak. "Sydney." His voice shifted, no longer the performative host's voice, something softer. "You okay?" Sydney shook her head slightly, not as an answer, but as if trying to clear it. When she looked at Jimmy, her eyes were glassy with tears that hadn't fallen yet. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Emotion. "She was my drama teacher junior year of high school in Spokane. She was the reason I'm here. The reason I'm sitting in this chair was." Jimmy caught it immediately. Sydney nodded, unable to speak again. Jimmy stood up. Not for comedy. Not for a bit. He walked around his desk, something he rarely did during seated interviews, and sat on the edge of it closer to Sydney, giving her something more intimate than the usual host-guest dynamic. "What happened?" he asked gently. To understand what happened next, you need to understand Sydney Sweeney before she was Sydney Sweeney. In 2013, she was just Sydney, a 15-year-old girl in Spokane, Washington who liked acting but didn't really believe it could be anything more than a hobby. Her family didn't have money for acting classes. Hollywood seemed like something that happened to other people. People from Los Angeles or New York, people whose parents were already in the industry. Sydney's high school, North Central High, had a drama program, but it was barely funded. One teacher, a few outdated scripts, a small auditorium that doubled as a gymnasium. Most kids took drama as an easy elective. Elena Costanos was different. She was 53 years old, had been teaching drama for 27 years, and treated every student like they were preparing for Broadway. She stayed late after school. She used her own money to buy scripts and props. She believed, genuinely, fiercely believed that theater could change lives. Sydney took drama because it fit her schedule. She had no particular expectations. But Elena saw something in the quiet sophomore girl who always sat in the back. After the first week of class, Elena kept Sydney after the bell. "You have something," Elena said, not as flattery as observation. "I don't know if you feel it yet, but you have real talent, and I think you should take it seriously." Sydney had laughed it off. "I'm not good enough for that." "Not yet," Elena agreed. "But you could be if you work." That conversation her the role that launched her career. Elena ran lines with her dozens of times. She recorded it on her phone. She gave notes that were honest and specific and exactly what Sydney needed. "Send this," Elena said. "Trust me. Send this." Sydney sent it. She got called back then again. And then she got the role. She was 17 years old and her life changed overnight. She moved to Los Angeles, started working, started becoming the Sydney Sweeney that everyone would know. Elena sent her a card. Sydney still had it. It said, "I told you. Go show them what I already knew. Love, Elena." Subscribe and leave a comment because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Sydney visited Spokane whenever she could between jobs, always stopped by the high school, always visited Elena's classroom. They'd have coffee in the teacher's lounge, and Sydney would tell her about auditions and sets and everything she was learning. "You're doing it," Elena would say, beaming. "You're actually doing it." In 2019, Sydney got the role in Euphoria that would make her famous. She called Elena first. Before her agent, before her parents, she called Elena. "I got it," Sydney said, crying happy tears. "The HBO show. I got it." Elena had screamed so loud, Sydney had to hold the phone away from her ear. "I knew it. I knew you would. Sydney, you're going to be a star. It's because of you," Sydney said. "All of this is because you saw something in me."
No, Elena corrected gently.
"I just helped you see what was already there." That was May 2019. Euphoria premiered in June. Sydney's career exploded. Magazine covers, award nominations, more offers than she could accept. Her life became a whirlwind of filming and press and travel. She texted Elena regularly, sent photos from sets, promised to visit when she had time. In December 2019, Sydney was on location in Vancouver filming The White Lotus. Her phone rang at 2 a.m. Her mother, which was never good. "Honey," her mother said, and Sydney knew from though. Sydney had broken down completely. "I never got to thank her properly. I was going to visit. I was going to bring her to a premiere. I kept putting it off." "And now she knew," Elena's sister said firmly. "She knew you loved her. She knew." But Sydney had never been sure. She'd carried that guilt for 5 years. The thank yous she never properly gave. The visit she kept postponing. The premiere invitation she'd meant to send. Behind the scenes, Fallon made a decision that defied every producer's expectation. Back in Studio 6A, Sydney was still crying. Jimmy had stayed where he was, sitting on the edge of his desk, giving her space, but staying close. "She died in 2019, Sydney said, her voice steadier now, the story finally out.
Car accident.
And I never got to tell her what she meant to me. Not really. I was always too busy. Always had somewhere else to be. I thought I'd have time." Jimmy nodded slowly. He understood something about regret, about missing chances, about the weight of things left unsaid. "You dedicated your SAG award to her." Jimmy said, "I saw the speech. You said her name. It was the first time I'd said it publicly." Sydney admitted it took me 5 years to be able to talk about her without completely falling apart and even saying her name tonight. She gestured at her tear-stained face. "Clearly, I'm still working on it." Jimmy looked at the audience, then back at Sydney. He made a decision that would later be called one of the most human moments in late-night television history. "Sydney," he said quietly, "I want to try something. Is that okay?" She nodded uncertainly. Jimmy stood up and walked over to his desk. He opened the bottom drawer, the one where he kept personal items, not show materials, and pulled out a small leather notebook. He walked back to Sydney and held it out. "This is my gratitude journal," he said. "I write in it every night before I go to sleep. 3 things I'm grateful for. People who changed my life." I started doing it after. Behind his desk, but not picking up his cards. Just waiting. Sydney bent over the notebook and started writing. Her hand moved quickly like the words had been waiting inside her for 5 years. 30 seconds, a minute. The audience didn't move. The band didn't play. Even the producers in the control room had stopped whispering. Finally, Sydney looked up. Her eyes were red, mascara smudged, but her voice when she spoke was clear. "Dear Elena," she read, her voice catching but pushing through. "I'm on The Tonight Show right now. You always said I'd make it here someday, and you were right. You were right about everything. You saw me when I couldn't see myself. You believed in me when I had no reason to believe. You paid for my headshot with your own money. You drove me to Seattle. You stayed late to run lines. You treated me like I mattered." She had to stop composing herself. The audience was crying. Jimmy was crying. Camera operators were crying. "I'm sorry I didn't visit more." Sydney continued. "I'm sorry I kept saying next time. I'm sorry you died thinking maybe I forgot about you because I didn't. I never did. Every role I book, every award I win, every magazine cover, it's because you taught me that I was worthy of taking up space. You taught me that my voice mattered." She closed the notebook carefully. Thank you, Elena Castanos. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for staying late. Thank you for the 4-hour drive. Thank you for believing. Everything I am is because you saw something worth developing. I love you. I miss you. And I promise I'll never forget. The studio erupted, not polite applause, thunderous standing applause. The kind of ovation that goes on and on because people need to release the emotion they've been holding. Sydney stood up, still holding the notebook, tears streaming freely. Now Jimmy came around his desk and hugged her. A real hug, not a performative television hug. When they pulled apart, he kept one hand on her shoulder. She knew, Jimmy said resources gets their chance. Because Elena Castanos saw something in a quiet girl from Spokane. And now because of one conversation on late-night television, everyone else sees it too.